Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 AP English, the Roberts Lectures, and we are in the Poetry unit. We now turn to Denise Levertov's A Time Past. Now, Levertov, of course, is one of our favorites in 303. We love to study her stuff. This one, A Time Past, coming from her 1975 offering. Of course, one of our favorite poems in 303, and we've given a lecture already at learnstrong.net on this one, is A Tree Telling of Orpheus, as well as The Secret. And then in the Roberts volume, we're going to study Hunting the Phoenix on page 1037, and as well the Hunting the Phoenix on 1037, and then Of Being on 693. Now, just to remind, Levertov, born 1923 in England, but dies in 1997 as an American poet. She did win the Robert Frost Medal, along with a lot of other awards as well. Now, why do we love this poem so much? Well, A Time Past, let's put it in our notes, is an attempt to try to claim a little bit of the feeling of what it means to lose something that, relationally, that one really wishes could somehow return. And yet, the knowledge is, it's not going to return, right? It's over. A time past. Let's go ahead and just read the poem, and then we'll annotate after we finish. The old wooden steps to the front door where I was sitting that fall morning when you came downstairs just awake, and my joy at sight of you, emerging in the golden day, the dew, almost frost, pulled me to my feet to tell you how much I loved you. Those wooden steps are gone now, decayed, replaced with granite, hard, gray, and handsome. The old steps live only in me. My feet and thighs remember them, and my hands still feel their splinters. Everything else about and around that house brings memories of others, of marriage, of my son. And the steps do too. I recall sitting there with my friend and her little son who died, or was it the second one who lives and thrives? And sitting there in my life, often alone or with my husband. Yet that one instant, your cheerful, unafraid, youthful, I love you too, quiet, broken by no bird, no cricket, gold leaves spinning in silence down without any breeze to blow them, is what twines itself in my head and body across those slabs of wood that were warm, ancient, and now wait somewhere to be burnt. Now let's begin, of course, at 2B right away. Symbolism. Obviously we've got the stairs. Notice the opening line, the old wooden steps to the front door. It's an amazing thing how a great poet will change the way you forever will look at something so simple as the steps that lead up to a house. Especially really old houses had often wooden steps that led up to a house. Now, of course, those wooden steps have been replaced by granite. We'll get to what that might mean in a bit symbolically. But let's put it in our notes already. The symbolism of the old wooden steps is a symbolism of the past, something gone. Of course, we've got to get into this thing about the splinters, no doubt. That is to say, the pain as well as the joy of the old wooden steps. Let's go ahead now and work through the poem and annotate as we go. The first observation by the speaker, we assume maybe a female. The old wooden steps to the front door where I was sitting that fall morning. Of course, we know all about the symbolism of fall and autumn and the beginnings of the dying and bringing on winter. When you came downstairs just awake, and my joy at sight of you, and then notice the parenthetic, emerging into golden day, the dew almost frost, pulled me to my feet to tell you how much I loved you. We'll hear a little bit later that in this memory of this individual, there will be the I love you too response, right? That is what she's going to hold on to. And then she's back to the steps again. Those wooden steps are gone now, decayed, replaced. Later at the end of the poem, these wooden steps are waiting somewhere to be burnt. and now have been replaced with granite. Now, many readers of this poem have seen this as one relationship ends and is replaced by another relationship, and whoever it is that came along afterwards is qualified not as wood but granite. You can see that as maybe more stable, maybe harder, harsher. There's a multiplicity of ways to interpret what happens next. Hard, gray, handsome. In other words, what I once had has now been replaced by something different, and I'm trying to convince myself that it's okay, this replacement. Now to the old steps again. The old steps live only in me, and this is of course the nature of memory, isn't it? That is to say, this is the way that we hold on to the things that matter in our life. They come, they go, but somehow still they're with us in our memory, right? And then she begins to talk about how they live in her. And my feet, my thighs, remember them. My hands still feel their splinters. In other words, it's possible this relationship had its problems, its splinters, reasons maybe being alluded to here as to why the relationship ultimately was decaying and ultimately ruined. Everything else about it around that house brings memories of others, of marriage, of my son. And the steps do too, she says. And then notice colon, and then another memory. I recall sitting there with my friend and her little son who died, or was it the second one who lives and thrives? Notice, trying to recapture, trying to remember. Memory is this way. Freud had a lot to say about this. Jung obviously had a lot to say about this in his notion of archetypes. The ways we try to reclaim memory in some way in this, and everything gets kind of fuzzy. We can't remember everything. The way wood decays, if you will, right? It can only hold so much weight after a certain amount of time. She says, and sitting there, and then it's in a little quotation, in my life. Notice the title of the poem is A Time Past. Often alone or with my husband. In other words, they sat on the front stoop. They sat on the steps, right? Yet that one instant, your cheerful, unafraid, youthful, I love you too. He must have responded to her, I love you. The quiet, broken by no bird, no cricket. The idea of course, the sounds of the silence, the sounds of silence. Of course, the famous Garfunkel song, right? Simon Garfunkel song. This is an image that's somehow captured in silence. No breaking of the silence by a bird or a cricket. Gold leaves, we're back to autumn and fall, spinning in silence down without any breeze to blow them, is what twines itself. And I think twines is the heart of this poem. I think it's the verb that is the heart of the poem. A spinning. We think of Yeats's Sailing to Byzantium and his Second Coming and the notion of the gyre, right? That spinning kind of idea. Twines itself in my head and body. Neurologists Jordan Peterson has written a lot about this, talked a lot about this, how we hold memories within our body, not just within our mind, right? She says, in my head and body, across those slabs of wood that were warm, ancient, and now wait somewhere to be burned. The idea, of course, is that the old wood was taken away somewhere to be burned away or whatever. Of course, this word burnt is a powerful last word. I mean, Levertov loves to do this, right, as we have said in our other studies of her poems. Give us a word that has so many different meanings. Burnt as in fire, burnt as in seared into the memory, right? This one instant that she says, I can't let go of this one instant. This one thing about you when you said, I love you too. And then it all comes back to, of course, the symbolism of the steps. At 2a, well, obviously a major message here is it's hard to let go. You can forget, but you can't let go. At 2b, the symbolism of the stairs is quite compelling, as well as when you think about the symbolism of the granite steps, the handsome steps, the hard steps. Maybe it was hard as well for the replacing of the steps. At 3a, what are the other great poems about love and loss that come to mind? We obviously think about great poems of love. We think about Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. as well as John Donne's Valediction, Forbidding Mourning. Those are two of our favorites in 303 about love. But what about lost love? And what about trying to reclaim love? Of course, we think about Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet as well. What are the poems that come to mind, though, or the text, or the film, or the songs that come to mind about having to live with the loss, and how powerfully difficult that is, right? Finally, at 3B, what was the time that you had to struggle to let love go? Why is it so hard, do you think, to forget? And why is it that often when we remember not just in our mind, but we remember in our body as well? What's up with that? Well, one more time, let's celebrate Levertov as one of the great voices of 303 for us poetically. Thank you.